Welcome to the Post-Credits Podcast, where we talk about movies after the credits roll. My name is Jesse.
I'm Max.
And I'm Logan.
And today we check back on the most orange man in Britain as we continue our look at the 28 Years Later series with its sequel, 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple.
Yes.
Ooh, all right.
Kind of crazy that it's been less than a year since the last one. So I can't remember last time that happened.
Yeah, it's true. The last one came out very early in the summer, I think, in May or April. No, first week of June last year.
Yeah, it came out in June.
First week of June last year was when 28 Years Later came out. It was kind of pitched as a trilogy. The 28 series started in 2002 with 28 Days Later, directed by Danny Boyle and written by Alex Garland. It continued 5 years later.
Wow.
With 28 Weeks Later, that's why I got confused, which was not directed by Danny Boyle nor written by Alex Garland. And then, 18 years after that is when they decided to continue it?
Yeah. Danny Boyle and Alex Garland had a little bit of a falling out after Sunshine.
Yeah, and they re-teamed to make this movie, which is a requel to one of their first very, very popular creations. 28 Days Later, commonly cited as rejuvenating the zombie genre in a way that no other movie really had. It reimagined the world of a zombie apocalypse in a really fascinating way. The zombies were fast. I mean, that's a big one. Not that hadn't been done before, but I guess it had never been so successful. The aesthetics of the world are very different. It's shot entirely on digital cameras, which makes it look really grainy and weird. Especially, it complements the empty nature of Britain that's shown in this movie, because 28 Days Later follows a driver named Jim, played by Cillian Murphy, who gets into a car accident, goes into a coma, and 28 days later wakes up, and it's revealed to him that a zombie apocalypse occurred. There was a zombie breakout like the day that he got into that crash and was checked into the hospital, and he's been asleep for all of it, and he managed to survive for this long, and it's about him navigating that. We move on to 28 Weeks, which is mostly about them trying to figure out, to make a vaccine for the virus that started this whole zombie apocalypse. Essentially, the idea being that all of the infected zombies starved to death, and now they basically release it again, right? So this is essentially just another zombie outbreak movie. And then 28 Years Later takes it way far into the future, and it posits that while mainland Britain is really screwed up by this whole zombie thing, there is some community of people living off the main isle who are able to live relatively zombie-free, but every so often they have to go into the mainland to hunt for supplies and kill whatever zombies come about. And it follows a young boy named Spike, played by Alfie Williams, who goes into the mainland and goes on this coming-of-age journey with the zombies. In that, he is introduced to a rich cast of characters. This includes Dr. Ian Kelson, the most orange man in Britain, played by Ray Fiennes, and Jimmy Crystal, play a cult leader of various people named Jimmy, played by Jack O'Connell. Jimmy Crystal really only shows up at the end of that movie, though. So let's ask the eternal and infernal question. How did you guys hear about this movie?
I guess ever since it was announced was when I first heard about it. Ever since the announcement, or I guess the trailer, rather, of 28 Years Later, I remember them saying that it was going to be a planned trilogy. And this film had already been shot by the time that had come out. And they were going to release the first film in June of last year. And Bone Temple was going to release January of the year following, which, obviously January 26th. And then supposedly if both of them did well enough, then they would greenlight the third one, which as of today, right? I guess not as of today. I guess as of now, there's a third film in development, which is good. But yeah, that's pretty much what I heard about it. The only thing that I was surprised to hear about was that the second one would be directed by Nia DaCosta instead of Danny Boyle, but still written by Alex Garland, who I think is penning the trilogy.
How did you hear about this one, Logan?
Probably just saw the trailer one day. This is one of those I'm not really sure when I first heard about it, probably early on into its initial announcement. But it's just one day I just happened to, this movie exists.
Yeah, I do remember the trailer for this movie really showed up a bunch in at least my theatrical visits. And that was true also of the 28 Years Later trailer for the original 28 Years Later, which is one of the greatest trailers of all time, I would argue. Do yourself a favor, look up the 28 Years Later trailer. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
The Bone Temple trailer is slightly worse, but only because the first one was just that good. I heard about this movie not when doing research for this year's most anticipated, but when doing research for last year's most anticipated, the 2025 most anticipated. If you'll recall, on that list, both me and Max had the first 28 Years Later on it.
It skyrocketed on my list just because of the trailer. I'd never seen 28 Days Later. I've always wanted to, but it was one that the original film hadn't been streaming anywhere just based on how it was shot. And then Sony was quick to be like, hey, by the way, I know there's a new one coming out, so we've restored the footage. You can watch it now. So I was like, great. So that made me even more excited that I could watch 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, leading up to 28 Years Later. So all that was very exciting. And the fact that Danny Boyle and Alex Garland were reteaming was also really exciting to me.
Yeah, and the thing with digital footage is that it's very hard to restore, which is part of the reason why it wasn't on a lot of streaming services, wasn't available to watch for a very, very long time, because it looks, I'll say it, bad. It looks really grainy and gross and weird. But yeah, I saw the first 28 days in preparation for 28 years. I also saw 28 weeks in preparation for 28 years. And yeah, how much of the series have we all seen? Just to put that out there.
Probably just 28 years.
Just
But
28
I've seen, I guess, some videos of 28 days and weeks, so I know the basic synopsis of both of those.
Yeah, I've seen all of them.
Yeah, so have I. Seen all of them as well.
So yeah, and this was also shot like simultaneously or back to back with 28 Years Later, the original.
I think
which
so.
Is, I believe, why Nia DaCosta directed the second one. I guess Danny Boyle had other projects to be focusing on.
Yeah, he has a new movie at some point called Ink.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know if he was filming that or if he was doing pre-production or what's up with that. But yeah, point being, this movie, the one we're reviewing, 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, is directed by Nia DaCosta.
Yes.
You probably know her work from the new Candyman and The Marvels, although I would argue that's not her work. The Marvels is one of the more famously meddled with Marvel productions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Have you guys seen any of Nia DaCosta's previous films?
Not really. I've kind of heard that she did, worked in Marvel, so I was kind of a little skeptical of Bone Temple when I heard about that, because, I don't know if I've said much about my thoughts on late Marvel, that whole thing, but, just one of those things. So,
yeah.
I mean, going into it, like seeing Bone Temple, I really thought, and I go into this probably later into the episode, but she really nails down Danny Boyle's whole style, really, and she puts her own twist on it. I'd say she's trying to replicate him in a way, but it's just slightly different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that Boyle works really well with, and that's very evident in a lot of these movies, is that he's very good with these wide open spaces. If you look at a movie like Steve Jobs, which was directed by Danny Boyle, just for some reason every scene, the production design is this big white room where every conversation takes place. And it looks really good. Danny Boyle knows how to shoot that, but that is a lot of his movies deal with that wide open space, which I think 28 Days does as well, and so does 28 Years, and I think The Bone Temple does that as well, so I certainly see that angle. I haven't seen any other Nia DaCosta films. I wanted to see the film she did last year, Hedda, but I didn't get to it.
Yeah. As for me, I have seen Candyman, was my first introduction to her. I wasn't a fan of the movie. Most of it had to do with the screenplay and handling of its messaging. But I feel like on a direction level, especially the use of mirrors is really cool. So I think Nia DaCosta definitely has a style of filmmaking, which I'm sure we'll get into more when we talk about this movie in particular. But yeah, that was my kind of introduction. That was almost 5 years ago, which is kind of crazy when that movie came out. But yeah, that's the only knowledge I have of DaCosta's work.
Yeah. So, should we? I mean, do we have more to say on terms of the pre-production of this movie before it begins and we go into the plot?
I don't think so.
Max, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Take it away.
So yeah,
Max.
this is I guess podcast first. I'll take a stab at narrating. So if you guys think I do okay, if you guys think I do really bad, let me know in the comments. I'll try to take notes on it next time.
Completely lie about his performance. Say the opposite of what you think.
All right, let's get into it. So this movie starts off with, and it's important to note that the 28 Days Later franchise is, I guess, infamous for how great its openings are. Of course, the original 28 Days Later opens with, Cillian Murphy wandering the open streets of London. 28 Weeks has the incredible opening with Robert Carlyle's character and his family getting attacked by zombies. And then 28 Years Later has the Teletubbies opening. So with this film, it opens in a sort of like abandoned swimming pool area or like water park place.
Seemingly, I thought it looked more like a nuclear reactor, and that was like a reactor pool.
I don't know. I could have sworn I saw something that looked like a slide that was like moldy or something. But
maybe
it was me.
Well, there was a sign that said no children beyond this point, which was interesting to me.
Oh, maybe.
But yeah, maybe.
But yeah, it essentially it takes place in this pool that's obviously has been drained to this point. And we get a look of Spike, which we said earlier was played by Alfie Williams. And at the end of the last film, he was taken in by the Jimmy cult, who is led by Jimmy Crystal, obviously played by Remick himself from Sinners last year, Jack O'Connell. And basically, as he's taken in, he is forced into a fight to the death with another Jimmy by Jimmy Scheidt, I believe is the name, which is an interesting last name, played by Connor Newell. And essentially wins the fight by stabbing him in the leg as they're all
Pulls
essentially
his pants down.
Yeah, literally pulls his pants down and full on stabs him in the leg. So
yeah, and it's specifically he hits like an artery or a vein of some sort within that leg that causes him to lose all the blood he needs to die.
Yeah, and essentially the other Jimmys are since mocking him. I mean, Spike's obviously he just got brought into the Jimmy cult, and after he wins this fight, the other guy essentially bleeding out. He is renamed Jimmy and gets inducted to the cult as what they call Fingers, which is an interesting way to phrase that.
So you already know they are very brutal in this world.
Yeah.
They're the one that torture people and kill them and are just totally ruthless even to each other.
Yeah, in a sense. And then you obviously, the way this is kind of framed out is that Jimmy Crystal is sitting on supposedly a throne, or there's a chair, but treats it like a throne. And throws Spike a blonde wig from the other guy that he had just killed and said that your name is now Jimmy. You're one of us now.
Right.
Kind of that thing.
And it's supposed to be Jimmy Seville. Is
Yeah.
that right?
So
for an American audience like us, that totally flew over our heads.
Yeah, the Jimmy Crystal, the Jack O'Connell character, is based on notorious TV star and also sex criminal Jimmy Seville, who's a big deal in Britain and in that area. Think if you're looking for an American parallel, the British version of Bill Cosby. Just some really, really horrible and horrifying crimes that this guy was doing behind the scenes while being one of the single most beloved people in Britain's history.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that that's what they pulled, at least assuming that's what Alex Garland and them pulled inspiration from. I mean, obviously, the blonde wigs essentially, I guess, bring that sort of sense out. And, the tonal shift ending of 28 Years Later, I think, and it captures that a little bit of just, they seem like these guys that are very lively, but in reality, obviously, you can tell from the opening scene, they are very brutal, and they will continue to be throughout the rest that we see them. But moving on from the opening scene, we get caught up with Dr. Kelson. This is Ray Fiennes' character. And at the end of the last film, he's essentially continuing his arc here by still building his temple, the Bone Temple, hence the title of the film. And he's kind of marking it as a graveyard of sorts. I mean, the main pillar is skulls, and there's bones that are tied around these little towers. Served, I guess, as a reminder of, I guess, people that have, like, perished, I guess, during this time.
Yeah, the whole tagline of, I guess, for lack of a better word, of this monument is Memento Mori, which is Latin for remember death.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a big theme in both, which is in both of these, 28 years later and in Bone Temple.
Yeah, and essentially, the Bone Temple in the previous film was mainly introduced in like the last little bit of that film, and essentially serves as setup to this one. So this one kind of explores what Dr. Kelson is really up to. And a kind of interesting thing to note, he does this a couple times, but he plays Duran Duran music whenever he's doing experiments. One of the few kind of strange needle drops in this movie, which I wasn't expecting. So he plays Ordinary World, Girls on Film, and Rio, which are very famous Duran Duran songs. And he's essentially...
So very British.
Yeah. And he's essentially doing this along his study, which is on the Alpha zombie, or I guess a guy named Samson, played by, I think, Kai Lewis Perry, I believe is his name. And he keeps coming back to him and essentially getting sedated. Every time he's near Dr. Kelson, he gets blown like with a tranquilizer or something.
And he is still fully pantsless.
Yeah, no pants.
No pants. He didn't have pants in the original. He still is for lack of pants. Ray finds Ian Kelson has this blow dart that he loads with various different painkillers, mostly morphine, to mellow out Samson.
Yeah. In a sense, while he's doing that, I guess he's trying to like bring life back out of him, I guess, in the interactions that they have. They essentially befriend each other. As they do it, Samson starts to see him a little bit less infected. He starts to wear clothes, shocker. His 28 inches later, the Boner Temple is not really as visible. He started eventually. He begins to clean himself. He eats some berries. He weirdly dances. There's a scene a little bit later on where Dr. Kelson is like weirdly dancing with him while, you guessed it, Duran Duran music is playing over it. And in a sense, Dr. Kelson almost kills Samson to essentially give him peace. But he stops shortly while he's doing that when Samson says the word moon. Essentially he's lying down. It's like later in the day. And he looks at the moon and he says moon. And that's when Dr. Kelson freezes and starts to begin working on a cure for him.
So Dr. Kelson, he delivers this monologue about how he has only 2 weeks remaining morphine supply in order to keep sedating Samson.
Right.
And he knows basically Samson keeps coming back because he wants to keep being sedated to get, peace and rest. And Kelson understands this, and he offers this ultimatum. He says that you will have peace, you will rest forever if I kill you. And what he offers is that he will, burn him, clean his bones, and put them in his bone temple. But then before he's able to inject him with the euthanasia fluid, Samson speaks the word moon.
Yeah,
looking at the moon.
Very reminiscent of Caesar in Rise of the Planet of the Apes saying no for the first time.
Yeah.
Where it's just like you see a character that's not really someone who's dialogue heavy, speaking almost for the first time. Yeah. And in 28 years, Samson was just posed as like this huge, hulking
gorilla of a man.
Yeah.
Like this huge, hulking zombie, and in this one, he's starting to get a little bit more humanity to him through his interactions and through his treatment.
And here's
from Dr. Kelson.
Little detail that I was noticing. I'm kind of wondering. There's some shots close up to Samson's face, maybe here, maybe later, and it's almost got this sort of an exaggerated caveman sort of vibe to it. I'm wondering, was that like animatronics they were using? Especially when he has like the red eyes, that's like
I think the red eyes were done with contacts.
Oh, like color contacts?
Yeah.
Maybe
that really was just his face.
I guess really good makeup, maybe.
The vibes it was giving.
Yeah.
So part of Samson's kind of exaggerated caveman look comes from the fact that when he charges, his eyes get really big, like really big.
Yeah.
So. I think it's probably done practically. people can probably open their eyelids that big. But I certainly get what you're saying. I just think that Kai Lewis Perez is a really good actor, you know?
Maybe, or I guess maybe some of the makeup effects really brought him to life. Cause,
yeah, I mean, he definitely looks like an exaggerated caveman. As if, and Kelson says that, like, as well, that what the virus does to the human body isn't, it doesn't necessarily transform them. It just brings them back. It clouds them, right? And it clouds their better judgment, which would essentially bring them back to the caveman instinct, right?
But yeah, I guess moving on a little bit from that.
I'm reading some stuff about prosthetics that they used on Samson. So.
Oh, what were some of them?
That's just all it says.
Yeah,
I might read about it later on my own, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, if you find anything, check in with us.
But yeah, I guess moving on from that, with Dr. Kelson and Samson, we get a glimpse into, I guess, 3 people who are wandering around the woods, and they run into a couple of the zombies who begin to chase them. They run back to their farm. One of them, unfortunately, doesn't make it and gets infected. The other 2, a woman and a younger man, head back to their farm, which is where they're taking shelter. They walk in, and the Jimmy cult essentially has entered their home. They're sitting at their table. It seems like they're eating dinner. They've taken their food, and they're basically acting natural. I mean, Jimmy Crystal is talking about the Teletubbies, and it's known very quickly that they snap. They very quickly snap, and it gets a sense of they make it clear that they are going to kill them.
Yeah.
They hang them up in their basement. And this is how graphic that they get. And he orders their fingers to skin the people alive. They're all hanging essentially from their hands off the ground. And they're all being skinned alive by members of the Jimmy cult.
Crazy.
Yes. It's important to note that Jimmy Crystal, he does this finger thing. He raises 2 fingers up close to his head and then 2 fingers to the side. It's a very Jimmy Savile motion mannerism. And he says that he hears the voice of Long Neck in his head, Satan.
Or Old Nick.
Yeah, Old Nick.
Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He refers to as Old Nick quite frequently.
Very often, yeah. But, I mean, he has like an accent, so it sounds like he's going, Old Nick, you know? Long, regardless. There seem to be a couple of different ways that he can order his fingers to kill somebody, right? And he calls it charity, which is something that Jimmy Savile was known for doing. And this specific torture is called remove shirt. And we actually see them remove shirt and then skin them and like take out their organs, and it's gross.
Yeah, they remove, I guess safe to say, they remove a little bit more than shirt. They remove skin as well. To the point, like, it gets so graphic that even, I forgot his name, even Alfie runs out, Alfie Williams is the actor's name, Spike runs out and basically throws up, which any normal sane person would probably have that same reaction.
Does that?
Yeah.
Plenty, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for his character in this movie, this is just an example of how I see him more as an observer rather than anyone really significant in Bone Temple. He's just watching people and looking traumatized this whole sequence and throughout this whole movie. He doesn't really have that big of an influence in what's going on.
Yeah.
And most of the protagonists of the 28, or at least the main characters, the one, not the main characters, I think the protagonist is correct. Basically the ones that have the biggest arcs. Their arc typically always runs from observer to active participant. Jim in 28 Days Later starts as someone exploring a broken world, directly to someone trying to fix it. And one of the important things about that movie is that the way he tries to fix it has nothing to do with actually killing zombies. Jeremy Renner's character in 28 Weeks goes from an observer, he literally has a gun, but he just uses the scope to spy on people, to an active participant that's allowing these children that hold the key to curing the infection by helping them survive despite the wishes of his government. I think that's Alfie Williams' Spike, his arc across all three of these films. I don't think that he exactly completes that arc in 28 years. He definitely doesn't complete that arc in The Bone Temple. I think that his arc is going to come to a close in the third one.
Yeah. It's essentially like he's brought it to the Jimmy cult in a sense where it's just like he clearly doesn't belong there. Like
Right.
he's clearly not a member and is not siding with them at all in the horrific things that they're doing, obviously, like with what the Jimmies are doing in the barn. And in a sense, yeah, I guess you're right that the third film I think will acknowledge that sort of I guess conclude that arc naturally. I guess he's like the main protagonist of this trilogy, I guess to say the least.
Yeah, I agree. Although he definitely takes a backseat in this particular movie.
Yeah. I guess getting back to the horrific barn stuff, Jimmy Crystal gives he sees one of the I guess last one of them standing, a guy named Tom, played by Louis Ashbourne Sarkis.
He is Andy Serkis's son.
Yeah, I just looked that up, that he is Andy Serkis' son. And he gives him the opportunity to become a finger if he wins a fight with another member of the Jimmy cult. And it's important to note that throughout this, the woman who we saw from earlier, this was the younger man who also fled back to the barn. The woman was able to escape their clutches and hide from them. She's hiding above them in the farm. And Tom selects Jemima, I think is her name.
Jemima.
Not Jemima, not Aunt Jemima. He selects Aunt Jemima's. No, I'm kidding. Jemima, played by Emma Laird.
Emma Laird, I believe.
Laird. Okay. And he selects her to fight, and it's become very clear that Tom selected her because she thought that she was the weakest one, and he finds out very quickly that that's not really the case, and she starts to like brutally like slash him, stab him, like torture him in all like really horrific ways. And meanwhile, we get a sense, obviously Spike went outside, and Jimmy Inc. joins him, played by Erin Killiman. For those of you who watched The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, she was the villain in that show. It's kind of cool seeing her again. And the two of them are kind of having this rapport. Essentially, like, the two of them are getting along, I guess, in this case. Like based on, like, how horrific the other Jimmys are. Spike at least befriends one of them, and Jimmy Inc. is the one that I guess he grows closer to in this case. And while Tom is being attacked by Jemima, the member of the house, her name was Kathy, played by Miran Mack, sends a hook to the back of her head, which essentially kills her, and essentially frees, I guess, Tom from her clutches. He's essentially crawling across the barn, and he manages to light the barn on fire by getting hold of a gas canister. And so while he's doing that, the barn's burning down. One of the members of the Jimmy cult gets set on fire, and he's essentially he's walking burn on fire.
This is the second movie recently in which Jack O'Connell is kind of hanging out next to a burning barn.
Yeah.
Sinners also did a similar thing.
Yeah. But yeah, after that, Kathy gets away, and Spike is sent to capture her by Jimmy Crystal, of course. But begs for him to go with her, as obviously Spike doesn't want to be anywhere near a part of this after the whole horrific barn scenario. And Kathy, of course, doesn't let him, punches him in the stomach, opens the gate, and locks it, and then runs away. And Spike goes back to Jimmy and essentially tells him that he killed her with a bow. Jimmy obviously doesn't believe this. And Jimmy Inc. just suggests that they ask the long neck in person. And she believes that Dr. Kelson is the one who is the long neck in this case.
Or Old Nick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Satan.
Essentially, Satan.
Well, and it's because Kelson is red, orange-ish, and he has a temple of bones that he hangs around in. That's pretty Satan-y. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty Satan-y.
Yeah. This movie plays with, I guess, religion in a way. I mean, Jimmy Crystal has a cross worn upside down.
Yeah, he wears and we later get a scene in which it's just pretty much stated out loud that he's a Satanist.
Yeah.
And it ties into him in the cold open of the first 28 years later. He is watching Teletubbies when the infection happens. He runs to the church where his father runs the church, and his father is just really excited about this whole invasion thing. And to Jimmy's eyes, it looks like his father is leading the charge of infected.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, in a way, he kind of is. And that's where Jimmy's his voice in his head comes from, the disassociation from that event.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I guess moving along, this is where the Jimmy cult side and the Dr. Kelson side eventually start to. I guess the two storylines are starting to merge together. The Jimmy cult is essentially spying on Dr. Kelson. They find his bone temple, and Jimmy Crystal goes up to Dr. Kelson, and they essentially have like a nice long conversation, if you will. We learn a little bit about Jimmy and his backstory. Obviously, if you remember the opening from 28 years later with the Teletubbies bit, that young kid was him, and his father was a priest and was the one that was getting attacked by the zombies in that little bit. And essentially what we learn from this is that he's essentially more scared than anything, excuse me. They have a little bit of a rapport there, and Jimmy essentially goes back, and in this moment we realize that Dr. Kelson, he realizes that he might not have much time left, considering he gets a sense of who Jimmy actually is. And so he reunites with Samson and feeds him a lot of antipsychotics. And in this, we follow Samson as he goes back to an abandoned train that I feel like we've seen a few times.
Yes,
in the span of both these
same
movies.
one that one pregnant zombie gave birth to the baby in the first 28 years later.
Yeah.
And we actually see Dr. Kelson burn that pregnant zombie and add her bones to the temple.
Yeah,
At the
exactly.
beginning of the movie. But yes, this is the train in which Samson, I believe, is first met in the first 28 years
Nice
later.
callback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then while Samson is on the train, speaking of callbacks, we get a flashback to who he was before he got infected. And he briefly remembers being a passenger on it before basically he got infected. And essentially does this dual thing where he's seeing reality, but in a sense he's seeing reality, but he's also seeing what his past life was kind of like.
It's playing with the idea that Dr. Kelsing was talking about, that the zombies in the psychotic state, in the psychological, I should say, they see something different than what normal people see, and that's what makes them attack.
Yeah.
So they play with that idea with Samson seeing himself as a kid on that train, and there's all these people on the train acting normal and doing the train stuff and asking him for a ticket. So then they all start looking at him. They're acting all weird and creepy. And then, there's a brief glimpse of the train conductor as this scary monster reminiscent of how the zombies see regular people. And then we go back to Samson in real life, and he says,
I
don't have a train ticket.
Have a ticket.
In a very normal person voice.
Yeah.
And it turns out the train car by now is filled with all the zombies, which he imagined were the people.
Yeah, and this was also earlier when we saw that man fall to the infected with the party of Tom and the other one. We see briefly that man turn into an infected, as if what the infected are seeing is the other humans as infected, as monsters, whereas they see each other as normal, because Samson, when he's sitting down on that train, he sees all of the other infected that are in that train as normal people.
But now they see Samson as a normal person,
or a monster.
Or a monster in their eyes, because he is acting non-psychotic. So they start attacking him, and then he goes into rage mode and then just beats down all the zombies in there.
Yeah. I thought it's kind of interesting how Dr. Kelson's experiment on him, that Samson started to get a grasp of humanity again, which we haven't really seen. Once the zombies get infected, it seems when they get infected, it's they all spit out blood and then they just lose every single sense that they've had. And then this one, with Samson, it's just you really get to see not exactly like his full backstory, but you get to see a glimpse of him starting to like maybe get a grasp on reality again, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if that's going to foreshadow something for the third film, if they're going to find a cure or something.
Yeah, that's like the most we see of his quote unquote humanity. That's like the climax of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Really cool stuff. Really, really well shot, I will say. Nia DaCosta, I think, directed that really well.
And I believe he has pants on in this, or a loincloth or whatever.
Yeah, he's got a cloth. He's covering the dingling in this next couple.
Yeah,
of
the
scenes.
dingling the dingling is fully covered up here, even as he's beating up all the other zombies that are in the train.
Yeah, it's a sign of character growth, you know. And one thing that's really interesting about the 28 Years Later series is that the people that are attacking don't even really feel like people that were turned once upon a time. All of the zombies in 28 Days and 28 Weeks are clothed. All of the zombies in 28 Years are naked. It's a contrast that they make very, very clear in the way that these movies are shot. And especially with, Samson's 28 inches being probably his most defining character trait and the part that people took away from the movie.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess fast forwarding from that, I guess at this point it's starting to get later in the day. And Dr. Kelson, I guess, realizing that Jimmy Crystal thinks of him as like old neck or like the devil, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they have a conversation in which Jimmy understands that Kelson isn't Old Nick, but everybody in the cult still thinks he is.
Yeah.
Because that's what Jimmy said.
Yeah, and then the problem is that Jimmy still wants control over the fingers, so he convinces Kelson to act like the devil so he can, maintain his legitimacy.
Yeah, and Kelson's idea of doing that is strange.
Yeah, it's a little strange.
Way to put it.
Yeah, and essentially later that night, Dr. Kelson presents to the Jimmy cult like a bunch of a really crazy kind of like performance, like a show or
With
something.
The Iron Maiden playing in the background.
Yeah, with an Iron Maiden.
I love that scene.
Yeah.
Like, you say strange, I say just awesome.
Yeah, it was. I will say
Spectacular.
it was a fantastic scene. I will say, and especially the needle drop of the Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
Earlier on in the film, when I mentioned this earlier, where Dr. Kelson plays Duran Duran, you can see in the corner as he's pulling out the album, he pulls out an Iron Maiden album cover. In a sense, I was like, oh, this guy must have good taste. And then in my mind, excellent
You were
sequence.
hooting and hollering when that started playing.
Yeah, it was a cool song choice, and I wasn't expecting it, at least at the moment. And so he puts on a show with the Jimmy cult. He's painted himself in like a different, I guess, like whiter like makeup or something or powder.
I think that's just the lighting, but like mascara in his eyes,
Yeah.
and he's like black.
Yeah, and he like lights a torch and he throws it on the ground, and a fire ring goes all around the Bone Temple. And yeah, Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden starts to play over it.
And that part when he puts on the fire suit and he has that dumbbell with the embers flying all around.
Yeah. Yeah, great stuff. And essentially he's listing off 3 commandments to the cult. One was listen to Jimmy Crystal, expand the cult, and to continue their mission are the 3 commandments that Dr. Kelson gives them.
Very obviously Jimmy's idea.
Right, and we know because Dr. Kelson says, like, oh, expand the number, and he says, oh, expand the number, right, to 1,000. That's the number that you meant. And then when he's giving his 3rd commandment, Jimmy says, oh, yeah, your final commandment. Like, it's pretty obviously that Jimmy set this whole thing up.
Yeah.
But then something unexpected happens.
Yes, something unexpected does happen in that Dr. Kelson begins to find out that Spike is part of the cult.
Oh, yeah, he's
From
there
the-
too.
Yeah. And in this moment, when Dr. Kelson realizes that Spike's a part of it, he issues a 4th commandment to them.
Oh.
And that is that Jimmy needs to be crucified.
Mm-hmm. In a very antichrist figure kind of way. Jimmy doesn't like that.
No, Jimmy does not like that. In a sense, Jimmy stabs Dr. Kelson, and in that, Spike stabs Jimmy in like this, I mean, not really a brawl, I guess, stabbing back and forth in different people.
Fight.
A fight, yes. And essentially, Jimmy Inc. Essentially looks after the other fingers as all this is going on. And Spike is essentially comforting Dr. Kelson as, Dr. Kelson doesn't make it out of it and eventually dies from it. And Jimmy Inc. does crucify Jimmy. They essentially stab him to a cross, and he's hanging upside down with his shirt off.
The upside down cross.
The upside down cross.
Peter's cross, basically.
Yeah. And if you're wondering what happened to Samson, he does come back here. And Samson seems to be free from the infection.
And pants.
And with pants,
With
yeah.
pants, he's got,
Off.
Nope. On. His pants are on.
No, they're off. Yeah, they're
He's
off.
got like a cloth. He's not.
No, he lost it.
I don't think he's letting it schlang.
I thought he did,
was.
no? I
Really?
thought
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I thought he let it
I
schlong,
remember
didn't he?
him. I remember him with the loincloth on at the very
No,
least.
he definitely took it off.
Okay.
Fire scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to rewatch that, then feel free. But
Maybe 2 or 3 times.
But yeah, as Jimmy is hanging upside down, essentially being crucified, he sees Samson with horns on his head.
and painted red.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
painted red, and essentially seeing him as the devil, which, obviously
Like
Samson's not dressed like that. And
Psychosis.
And he says, "Father, Father, why have you forsaken me?" Mirroring not just like the last words of Jesus on the cross, but also the words that Jimmy himself said when he was a kid in the beginning of 28 years later.
Yep.
yeah. And as Samson shows up, he greets Dr. Kelson by name and essentially carries him off, as Dr. Kelson has passed away at this point.
I think it's implied that he's taking him in the direction of the incinerator where he will put his bones up on the temple.
Yeah, as the function of the Bone Temple goes. I guess that's the main thing that we learn from the Bone Temple. I guess from the last one, I guess we see it more in this one. And I guess Samson's not done here, as Jimmy's still hanging upside down. There's this cool shot where we see it from his perspective, where everything's obviously upside down. You see the sky below. You see the temple in the opposite direction, and Samson pops out and presumably kills Jimmy. But it happens from his perspective, so we don't know for
a different
sure.
zombie, not Samson.
I think it was a different because
Was it different? I thought it was just Samson that did that.
Jump
No?
scare
It-
zombie number 5.
I don't think it really made a whole lot of sense for it to be Samson, because how is he 2 places at once, right? He was carrying Kelson off, and then he's back.
Oh, maybe.
It-
Yeah.
I guess it went too quickly. Though.
And
I didn't
yeah,
notice.
It did, and it did look like a guy with a beard, so maybe. But I
He
took it
screamed like a zombie.
right. He screamed
that-
like a regular infected
Yeah.
person, whereas it's been established that
It
Samson
would be out of
isn't that.
character for Samson at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, after that, after Jimmy's presumably left to be killed, Spike and Jimmy Inc., who at this point Jimmy Inc. reveals herself to be named Kelly, which I thought was kind of funny, as the actress's name is Erin Kellyman, which is part of her last name.
Yep.
And essentially they go off together, and I guess the two of them are working together, I guess, throughout whatever they're trying to do. And it's at this point that flashback to, I guess it jumps forward to, daytime, and we get a look at this house that's, I guess, in a sense, in the middle of nowhere. And, there's breakfast cooking on the stove, and then it cuts to a daughter working on something, played by Mia Eastmond. And at this point, if you're a fan of this series, especially if you've seen 28 Days Later, Jim, played by Cillian Murphy, walks in. And essentially, this is where he's been hiding out since the end of 28 Days, which I got really excited. I mean, I knew he was going to be at the end of it, but it was just so exciting. It's just so cool to see him on screen again. And Jim and his daughter, Sam, hear noises outside of the window. And they go out and they see Spike and Kelly running away from zombies. The daughter says, "Should we help them?" And Jim and Sam walk off, presumably going to help them, setting up the third and final film in the trilogy.
Yeah, and that's when credits roll.
Yeah, and that's the end of the movie. And even more exciting to note that in the credits, the amazing score to this franchise is played.
Oh, right.
It's-
Acoustic rendition of the original 28 Days Later.
Yeah.
And it eventually it turns into the classic metal theme with the electric guitar.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's so awesome to hear in theaters. Yeah.
Yeah, and the composer for this film was I don't know if she did the last one, but Hildur Gudnadottir, I believe is how you pronounce her name. She also did the score for Joker, both the Joker films.
Mm.
Because if you like the score for those, she also, I guess, did the rendition of the 28 Days Later score for this one. She did a great job in my mind.
Yeah, and she did not score the previous 28 Years Later, but she did score Hedda. So
Oh,
I
that's
think
how she
it's
knows Nia DaCosta.
more likely that she followed Nia DaCosta
Yeah,
rather than following Danny Boyle or something.
yeah.
Yeah, so what did we all think of 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple?
Pretty crazy. Going into this, having seen 28 Years Later only 2 hours prior to seeing Bone Temple, going back to 28 Years Later in itself, the ending to that movie, I know you guys talked a little bit, before the podcast about like how it ended and the tone shift of it. That really didn't impact me as much because I saw the, Bone Temple right after.
Yeah.
But I think, to my perspective, that cliffhanger really paid off with the Jimmy cult, seeing as they were such a big part of this movie. And yeah, I really liked this as a whole. Going back to what I said about, the difference in these two directors' styles, so to say, like Danny Boyle's, I guess, as detailed as I can be, he's a lot more in the cinematography area. You see a different style with him that Nia DaCosta tries to replicate in Bone Temple. But I think there's, there are differences that make both of these good. Is
Yeah.
what I can say about it. I guess to be specific about it, because usually I don't like doing that. Boyle's style in 28 Years Later, it's a lot more like glitch effects is the best way I can put it. I don't know. It's really hard to describe for me as of now. Because you can even see in the credits, like the brief flashes of the zombies and the way the text appears, like, and how it moves. It's very, like
shaky?
not
Or,
shaky.
maybe
I'm
not shaky.
looking for the word. It's like janky, like stress-inducing. Like, I know there is a perfect word for how I'm trying to describe it. So
I believe in you. I think you'll find it.
Yeah.
I'll find it eventually. But Nia DaCosta, on the other hand, it's a lot more artsy, like art house style. The way some of these shots are composed, it's almost like walking through a gallery.
Right.
For me, and I think for Bone Temple, that really works with this movie really well. And as far as it's being something that I can describe a lot better than 28 Years Later's style, it's different, but it's a welcome difference, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess as for me, I have seen all four. I guess now I've seen all the films in the franchise. For me, I'm a huge fan of the original 28 Days Later. I get it. If you watch it now, the way it's shot doesn't necessarily hold up for a lot of people. For me, I actually thought it added to a lot of the eeriness to it. Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, I think, killed it with the writing and directing of that one. And, Cillian Murphy's character, I think, was a standout there. 28 Weeks is a film that I don't love it. I don't hate it. I'm kind of in the middle on it. Had a fantastic opening, but I think from there, I just think it quickly devolved into some other stuff. I think the good outweighed the bad for me on that one, but it was a little bit of like dumb people doing dumb things, which is kind of annoying. And then 28 Years, which came out last year, I really enjoyed that one. I think it does a lot of things really well. However, most of my issues with it, aside from some parts in the middle feeling like they were meandering a little bit of just people wandering around the forest for a long period of time, but a lot of my issues with that film eventually devolved into the last 20 minutes, where everything essentially felt like setup. The Bone Temple being one of them, which if we talked about, was explored a lot more in the second part, hence the title. And the ending kind of going a little bit against what Logan said of just like the tonal shift. At least when I watched it, literally made me lower it half a star. It's just like, why all of a sudden it turns into an episode of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. especially given the nature, especially it doesn't feel like it fits with 28 Days Later, which was a little disappointing to me, especially since it was Danny Boyle and Alex Garland reteaming. So what I think about 20 Years Later, The Bone Temple, I thought this film was fantastic. I was mixed on the previous one. I thought this film was great. It fixed a lot of my issues of the previous. I thought this was a lot more focused. And even though, yes, it is the least zombie of all four, but I feel like it replaces that with kind of the question of what would the worst of humanity look like in a time like this? And the Jimmy Cole essentially represents that with the absolute standout performance to me being Jack O'Connell as Jimmy Crystal. I mean, I was riding off high of him after seeing him in Sinners, and this film he does great. He's so good at playing villains. And there's just a lot of really horrific stuff, especially in the barn. Ray Fiennes was great. The whole Bone Temple side, I think, was handled a lot better in this movie than it was in the last movie. Or at least it was given some depth to it. But I thought this film was a lot more focused. I thought the pacing was a lot more better. It didn't overstay its welcome. I thoroughly enjoyed this one all the way through.
Yeah, I think that leads well into what I really want to talk about, which I think is the elephant in the room with this whole movie. I think we need to talk about Jimmy Savile.
Jimmy Crystal?
Jimmy Savile, the real guy.
Oh, the real guy.
Earlier in the episode, I compared him to Bill Cosby, and that was really only to equate their public standing within their countries. Bill Cosby was known as one of the most wholesome men in America. Same with Jimmy Savile. The extent and scale of Jimmy Savile's crimes is unthinkable and almost incomprehensible. I mean, he was systematically preying on the most vulnerable people. This ranges from children to the elderly, the disabled, the dead. Just absolutely heinous things. And when we're looking at transforming that really, really just that horrible person that did all these things, right? This is a person. How can you possibly reconcile that into the image of a character? How do you build anything based on that without, I mean, like, Jimmy Crystal in the movie is simply pure evil.
Yeah. They are quite literally like pure, like they just pure evil, like no redeemable qualities whatsoever.
And that's the thing. They're masquerading as something not that, right? They're masquerading as, I mean, Jimmy Savile, for example, as the image of Jimmy Savile through Jimmy Crystal, the most, one of the most well-loved men in Britain. And it's also important to note that the zombie apocalypse starts in 2002 when Jimmy Savile was still really highly popular. The allegations and the realizations of his crimes didn't start to come out until around 2011 when he died. And so, you know, you look at the things that they're doing, the Jimmy Cult is doing in the movie, how they're portraying themselves. They're portraying themselves as Jimmy Savile, who at this point is still well-loved. In this universe, no one will ever know about the horrible things that Jimmy Savile did. And they're portraying themselves as the Teletubbies. Jimmy Ma, I think, does the Teletubbies dance.
Yeah,
when they're sitting
that's
at
right.
At the dinner table, she does. I think it was the Dipsy dance.
Yeah, I remember that
Just
because Jimmy Crystal makes a reference. He's like, "Have you guys ever seen the Teletubbies?" Which, you know, the fantastic opening of 28 Years Later is kids watching the Teletubbies, and then that's when the zombie breakout occurs, at least from their perspective.
Yeah, and it's an interesting, like, it's an interesting continuation of the message of the series, right? The message of the series, it feels like, has always been, like, the message, at least of the first movie, was that if you remove, like, if you lower down the amount of people you're running into, the worst of humanity is going to become so much more obvious, and somehow it isn't the bloodthirsty, unthinking zombie monsters, right? It's the people that are that have full lucid control over themselves, that are able to methodically do these horrible, horrible things. in 28 days later, we meet this army general captain who had a premeditated plan to kidnap 2 women, one of whom is like 6, and have his soldiers rape them constantly in order to get them pregnant. That's not something that the infected thought of. That was like a plan that he had, that he outlined. In this movie, we see Jimmy Crystal doing, premeditating these awful plans and
skinning people alive.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not a coincidence that the 2 things that we hear, the methods for torturing these people and for killing them, is remove shirt and remove trousers. That's not coincidental. And what we see for the whole movie is Jimmy, it seems like he is completely out of his mind, right? He's a lunatic, and then he sits down with Dr. Kelson, and you realize he's not a lunatic. He is in complete control of everything that he is doing. He is not deranged. He knows what he is doing, and he is trying to make his followers deranged so that they don't know what he is doing.
Yeah. I think that's what makes him such a great antagonist. Like, we know what happened. We know what happened to him. Like, he doesn't have some big tragic backstory. Like, he has, a scenario like where he was when the zombies first attacked. But like, he's somebody that he's just like, kind of like you said, like, he's pure evil. Like, he doesn't have like this big thing that like sways him one way or the other. Like, he's just this guy that is so set on doing these horrific things and is fully in control of everything that he's doing. It's not like he like snapped or became unhinged. Like, he's somebody that's just like, he's fully aware of what he's doing, which is just horrifying. And the way Jack O'Connell portrays him, like, another thing I didn't mention about this movie is that it's surprisingly, for how graphic we describe some parts, it's surprisingly funny. That there's a lot of humor that landed in this movie. And a lot of that, like, when Jack O'Connell plays villain, especially with Remick and with this one, it's just like, he's so terrifying, but can also be like really charismatic in the way he talks to people, which is something that's just like, I don't see that too often, that either like villains are like really horrific or like really not horrific. And with him, he's able to like be like this like charismatic guy that's just an absolute psycho. And I feel like with this movie, like I feel like just portrayed a great antagonist, and one that, sure, the zombie side wasn't as prevalent in this one, but I feel like replacing that with, what would the worst of humanity look like with a guy like Jimmy Crystal, I think it was a great villain.
Yeah, and bouncing off of that point, exploring back to the religious themes of the 28 Days, Weeks, Years franchise. I guess years franchise now, but how they explore the worst, the evil, the fallen brokenness of mankind in that way is something I really love, especially in these post-apocalyptic themes. And like, not to go off on too big of a tangent, it reminds me a lot of Caesar's Legion in the Fallout series, especially in Fallout New Vegas. Because, I mean, in the game, you see them being this ruthless, tyrannical, and bloodthirsty, like, machine of people who conquer the wasteland and, torture and crucify and enslave innocent people. You see the same thing with Jimmy's cult, and the way they handle that in both examples is really interesting for me to see, and it's something in the Fallout series, again, not trying to go into a tangent, but highlighting a series that we have been doing. It's something that's really missing from that, where it's focused a lot less on the worst of mankind in a post-apocalyptic world, but it's so refreshing to see that in Bone Temple.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think that what the Bone Temple, and also what 28 years later really excels at, is it's a very meditative character study.
Yeah.
28 Days Later was very focused on the world. What happens to the world? What happens to the systems that we rely on, right? the military is a big part. The entire film is predicated on the fact that they need to make it to this military base, and they do, and it sucks. It's worse than being out with the zombies. What happens to those things that we rely on? 28 Weeks Later, I think one of the big issues with 28 Weeks Later is that it doesn't fit in terms of messaging. So I'm going to skip that one because it's not very good. 28 Years Later is then focused really on the characters, the relationship between Spike and his father, and Spike and his mother, and what do people look like in this horrifying world, and that's what the Bone Temple is really, really good at, in my opinion. We see Jimmy Crystal, we see Dr. Ian Kelson. I think there's a really interesting dichotomy built up with whether or not these characters fear death. Jimmy Crystal is absolutely terrified of these zombies, and he's horribly evil and psychotic, and not psychotic by the definition of psychotic, but horribly evil. And Dr. Ian Kelson is the one character that has shown kindness to everybody.
He's psychopathic.
Psychopathic, that's the word I was looking for. Kelson is not afraid of death. Kelson says he spent 28 years not fearing death. And we see similar things with Samson. Samson is death. He is the death. That he is the leader of these bloodthirsty creatures that have caused so much destruction and killed so many people. And even he is redeemed by the end. He is cured by someone else who showed him kindness.
Death is conquered.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah. And yet it still acts as somehow this equalizer, right? Jimmy Crystal is crucified upside down. They make explicit reference to the fact that in order for him to be brought to life, in order for him to be brought back to life, in order for him to be resurrected, he must be crucified. And yet he's crucified as an inversion of that principle, and he's left to be eaten by the death that he fears. Meanwhile, the death that didn't come for him has redeemed itself. I don't know. I think it's fascinating, and there's a lot of different ways to approach it, and the use of real-life figures like Jimmy Savile. I think Alex Garland is a very thoughtful screenwriter. That wasn't by accident, and that wasn't thoughtless. And I actually think for portraying one of the most horrible people to ever live, it does a pretty good job at not glorifying him in this movie.
Yeah, I think they definitely did a great job with that. And especially even with this time around, bringing Nia DaCosta in, which I didn't talk about too much, which I kind of feel bad for. She's great. I feel like if you're someone who wasn't crazy about her work in the past, the Marvels, I don't blame her for. I wasn't too crazy about Candyman. This is the film that I think really solidifies her as that. Like, she has talent. She made a great film. Like, she has a style. Like, the Upside Down
She
POV
really
was great. Yeah.
More in her element in this movie, I think, than the Marvels even.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
Is all I have reference for, really.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I haven't seen the Marvels, but with that movie's backstory, I don't think that was entirely her. But I feel like with this one, this film really showcases her talent, and I think she is a great talent. If her name's attached on something, I'll definitely be curious about it, especially a movie like this. Yeah, just a really great addition to the series overall, and the arcs that they portray, especially like with Samson and with the Jimmy cult, is just like it's really astounding what they're able to do with this franchise, especially up to this point, just like taking it in a new direction, but one that actually makes sense and one that doesn't feel forced. And yeah, I'm really, really happy with a lot of stuff that they did in this movie.
Yeah, and I want to make one more point about the characters.
Yeah.
But because I know I'm kind of talking about them a lot, but I find them really interesting.
Yeah, go for it.
To the point of Jimmy Savile's crimes having not been discovered by the time the zombie apocalypse would have hit, and with Jimmy Crystal essentially emulating him, I think it's interesting that the character that emulates the good ends up repeating and emulating the bad, right? The good that lies above Jimmy Savile, how he presented himself, versus the bad of who he truly was. That's what Jimmy Crystal ends up emulating. Whereas Kelson, when he sees the evil that lies above Samson, and he actually finds the good that lies beneath, and that's what he ends up bringing out. I think that's an interesting point.
Yeah, that is
For
interesting.
for the character that acts like or portrays himself as and is portrayed by Jimmy as the most evil devil figure. Dr. Kelsing, it really is the most Christ figure in this movie. It's such a cool like inversion of that aesthetically, but like when you look deeper, it really is flipped the other way. And I think it's really interesting to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Mhm.
So how would we compare this with the rest of the franchise, do you think?
Um,
Because I think this is the best one.
Maybe it's a recency bias, but this one in competition, because for me, I'm a huge fan of 28 Days Later. Like, I really like that movie. Love the character work in it, and the third act especially kind of dives into like a lot of like worse than humanity when like Jim is off with essentially like these like army guys, and they're like treating them all really horribly. I think as of right now, Bone Temple is my favorite of the series, which I wasn't really expecting. 28 Days Later, 28 Days Later and Bone Temple are like two great films, like two of the best zombie movies ever made in my mind. I will say like Bone Temple was so good to me that it actually made 28 Years a little bit better. The last 20 minutes, I feel like it made a lot of that a little bit better by showing the Bone Temple stuff actually did go somewhere. We got more exploration of Dr. Kelson. We got, thank God, the Jimmy cult was redeemed. I was so excited to hear that Jack O'Connell was playing a cult leader, especially coming off of Sinners. And the end of that film really tested me with the Power Rangers bit, it seemed like it was ripped straight out of Power Rangers. But I felt like what they did with the Jimmy cult, I think, kind of fixed a lot of that. And essentially a lot of my issues with the last 20 minutes are mostly resolved in the Bone Temple by showing that like there was payoff for everything that was set up. Like there was some thoughtful exploration there that I felt like was set up well in 28 Years, but obviously set up nonetheless. And then 28 Weeks being at the bottom of just a film that I don't hate. I don't think it's bad. It's just a fine movie to me. But one that's definitely the black sheep of this franchise. It doesn't really fit. They don't acknowledge it that much, and maybe it's because Danny Boyle and Alex Garland only served as producers for this one. They weren't involved in the screenplay or the direction or anything like that. But yeah, I thought Bone Temple was fantastic, especially compared to the others, and for me, actually, kind of exceeded my expectations in a bit with how much I loved 28 Days. But yeah, I guess that's how I would compare it.
Yeah, I'd say Bone Temple compared to the original 28 Years Later, it's more thoughtful, and going back to Danny Boyle versus Nia DaCosta's different styles, as I struggled to explain earlier, Danny Boyle's style is frantic, Nia DaCosta's style is thoughtful.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good words.
Yeah. And I definitely love both of those styles in both of those movies, especially. I have like no way of comparing one over the other. It's apples and oranges to me, but both are really great in their own ways. And Bone Temple, in how its character exploration is incredible.
Yeah, and I think the Bone Temple is the best. I would put 28 Days Later right below it, then Years, then Weeks. I don't like Weeks. I think Weeks is a bad movie.
It's weak.
It's weak. Yeah.
It's beyond weak. It commits just about every sin I think a horror movie shouldn't, all while not being especially interesting on a thematic level. So I just don't like 28 Weeks. And I'm glad that they didn't continue the story from 28 Weeks, because 28 Weeks has a pretty big setup for like a sequel or a franchise at the end of it. So I'm glad they didn't follow up with that at all. But yeah, do we have any predictions for 28 Years Later 3?
I guess
Cillian Murphy does something. I don't know.
Yeah. I guess it's awesome to see the character of Jim again.
I want to see more. I think there's going to be more of Spike's character arc and finishing off that, and maybe something he maybe comes back to the island in the beginning of 28 Years Later, or something to do with that. Maybe the baby has something to do with that. Who knows what'll happen?
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of things laid out. Aaron Taylor Johnson's character back at the island. I would be shocked if they didn't do anything with that. I'm sure he'll be a big player the next one. Obviously, seeing Jim team up with Spike and Kelly is definitely a dynamic that I can't wait to see. And I guess with Jim's daughter, Sam.
And with Samson, with Like, I think, I don't know what else they could explore with his, rise back to humanity, or what role he's gonna play in all this. But I'm kind of excited to see what he's gonna do.
Yeah. I wonder if he'll play a part in that. If they run into Samson and seeing him as like Dr. Kelson's like big, I guess, almost successor as
Yes,
somebody
his
who's
protege.
someone who's regaining, I guess, someone who's regaining
His
life.
faculties.
Yeah.
In a way.
I guess like somebody who's regaining life, or I guess like regaining his consciousness again.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's gonna
Humanity, whatever.
his humanity of just like maybe finding a potential, like, I guess, a cure or a way out of just like years of just zombies running around all over the place. And I'm wondering if them not showing Jimmy's death alludes to maybe if Jimmy comes back as infected, which I don't know if they'll do that. But imagine seeing like Jack O'Connell coming back as infected. But I don't know. That one's a little bit less so.
Yeah, I am interested to see what they do with Jim as a legacy character. That can get really rocky sometimes, especially with some legacy sequels that I can think of. I know what you did last summer.
Yeah, which is a film I have seen. Yeah,
And
they do not handle that well. I will tell you that.
And just I do hope that Samson plays a large part in that third movie. I'm really excited to see where they go from there. I'm kind of happy leaving Jimmy Crystal in the past and introducing either a new foe or just confronting the reality that is none of these 28 later films, at least none of the good ones, have actually been about the zombies. 28 Weeks Later tried to be about the zombies, but it wasn't really about the zombies. Maybe this one's going to be about the zombies. And yeah, Alfie Williams, Spike, I keep referring to him by his actor.
No, it's okay. I called him Alfie earlier.
But yeah, Spike, Kelly, Jim, Sam, all kind of teaming up. I wonder if we're going to get any of... I don't remember what her name was in the first movie.
Oh, yeah, the one that befriends Jim.
Yeah, Selena.
Yeah. Where was she at the end? I didn't see.
She wasn't at the end of 28 Years Later, but maybe she'll be at the third one. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. And yeah, I don't know about any of the Cure things. I'm not sure if that's where they're going to go. It would be cool if they did go that way, but I don't know if they will. So yeah, do you have anything more to say?
Ratings?
Let's go into ratings.
Yeah.
What are we giving this film?
Solid 4 for me. I wouldn't say it's the best movie out of anything I've seen total, but definitely one of the best in the 28 franchise.
Yeah. As for me, this is a 4.5, right up there with 28 Days, which I also gave a 4.5. If Primate was an early contender for most surprising movie of the year, which if you haven't seen that podcast, go check it out. Our first weekly spoiler review of the year.
When it's out.
Yeah, whenever it comes out.
It will be out by the time this episode is out, so.
Yeah, so be sure to go check that one out. And if that was the most surprising movie of this year, at least in my mind, or at least early contender for most surprising movie of the year in my mind, 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple is early contender for one of the best movies of the year. Will it end up in my top 10 of the year? I don't know, but January of 26 has been really good so far in terms of, January used to be the dumping ground of bad movies and specifically bad horror films. And it seems like the last couple of years they've really turned that around. And this year I'm very impressed with the quality of these movies, especially with Bone Temple. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie all the way through. I think it outdid the last one on almost every single level. But not to say I disliked 28 Years, I didn't. And I think this film kind of made that one a little bit better in my mind, even though I'm not crazy about everything in that film. But yeah, Bone Temple is a 4.5, probably like a middle 4.5. Almost said 4.5. That's not proper wording there. This film was great. I can't wait to see what else Nia DaCosta does. I cannot wait for this third film, and I'm hoping that this movie's box office doesn't lead Sony to cancel it, which would break my heart. But I cannot wait to see what they do with the third one. I think Alex Garland really kills it with the writing, especially in this one. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this one all the way through.
Yeah, this is a high 4 for me, which is also what I gave 28 Days Later. a great meditative character study that turns into just a really, really great movie. Yeah, this is my favorite movie of 2026 so far, which isn't saying much considering I've seen 2. But yeah, I'm interested to see how this shapes out on my end of year rankings. I don't know if it'll make a top 10. As far as zombie movies in general go, this is one of the best ones, and certainly one of the best like modern ones.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, Letterboxd plugs. On Letterboxd, I am Threnv. That is THRNV. And yes, I have my review for 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, up. But I also have a review for Christopher Landon's film, Happy Death Day, on there. Ooh, that's fun. Yeah, check that out if you're interested.
Yeah. My letterboxd is MJ Spiegel, all lowercase. That's MJSPIEGEL. I do have a review up for Primate, as well as a couple other rankings you can go ahead and check out. As of right now, I'm working on a review for Pulp Fiction, 20 Years Later, The Bone Temple, which, my full thoughts are on here, as well as a review for Paranormal Activity, which I will publish, hopefully all that by the time this comes out, as well as a bonus little ranking where I'm going to rank all 4 of these movies. Which, if you rewind, you probably know what that ranking is. But if you want to check my letterbox in case you forgot, it'll be up there too.
Yeah, and on Letterboxd you can find me at Invaded Films, as INVADEDFILMS. And by the time we are recording, I've actually been reviewing our 2025 list. I have been doing that finally. I've been working on my Letterboxd after so many promises that I would get to do that as my New Year's resolution. But, here we are. I do have my Bone Temple review out as we speak. And by the time this comes out, I will hopefully have all my reviews for our 2025 and 2026 movies out.
Yeah, if you have anything to say about what we said, you agree, disagree, or just have something an unrelated point to bring up, a question to ask, anything at all, leave it in the comments section below. We will get to it on the next episode of the Weekly Spoiler Review, coming at you soon, hopefully. And keep an eye out on our community posts page, because we will be posting regular updates as to the future episodes that will be coming out on this podcast. With all that being said, and with all those bones being templed, roll credits.